there's always this one person or like these 5 people who will be like, ew, but China's capitalist. Like, because China produces and manufactures, and it's like so integral to this global capitalist economy. So how on earth could you say that China's socialist or on the road to socialism? So how do you respond to that, which I'm sure that you get a lot too? It's like, how can China be socialist if it's so intertwined with America's capitalist economy, for example?
I mean, no, this is always one of the eternal questions. I mean, first of all, I think kind of a similar point I made earlier, there's always this expectation, and the critics of socialist countries will always say, oh, but that's not socialist because, oh, there's capitalists or there's private capitalists. Like, who said, I mean, Marx didn't say that all of a sudden you just transition from like, here's revolution and then no more private capital. It just doesn't work like that. We still live in a capitalist world run by, US hegemony. So it's not that easy. But I mean, I guess maybe I can break it down in some more kind of grounded ways. If we ask the question, do capitalists exist in China? Yes. And it forms a big part of the economy. And this is part of the reform and opening up period, is that recognizing that, yes, there were social and economic gains, incredible ones, during the Mao period, but the country was still very poor and extremely isolated. At that point, had been basically sanctioned since its existence, So in terms of rapprochement with the US and opening up to the world market was part of a strategy to develop socialism, in the sense that, okay, we're still really behind technologically. Our industrial capacity is still really behind. We need to catch up. In order to do that, we still live in a capitalist world with imperialism. So we need to break the isolation. That means accessing, markets, accessing capital so that you can actually finance projects, and also know-how, So it means sending people all around the world to study and get the knowledge and develop scientists, develop, your technological and information sectors, everything of that, just to basically develop the productive means of the country. And in that period, there was also a reintroduction of a capitalist class. It does exist here, which had been pretty much, became non-existent during the early socialist period. But it was part of the strategic national plan, is say, okay, we need to reintroduce it, but how do we reintroduce it is the way. And so the policy was under this, keep the big and let go of the small, meaning that the very strategic sectors remain in the hands of the state in terms of the government. But the smaller sectors, we can begin to reintroduce private capital to stimulate innovation, development, and encourage that. But it was very much a kind of a planned or intentional way of looking at how capitalist elements or capital would be reintroduced. And I would recommend for anyone who wants to learn about this, a book that just came out by 1804 Books in New York, called China's Great Road by John Ross, who is a British economist, writes a lot about this period of understanding how the opening up reform period is in line with the development of socialism. And I just want to add 2 more elements in helping us understand why we cannot say China is capitalist. One is just land. And we, this great Egyptian Marxist economist, Amir Amin, just a few years before he passed away in 2018, he actually wrote about this question in China. And he kind of put it quite kind of simply and easy to understand, is that for him, the fact that the land is still in public hands, it makes it impossible to characterize China as being capitalist, because, I mean, capitalist society is based on this, this value, this principle of private property, and private property as being a commodity. Here, it's still in public hands, even though there is real estate in terms of the use of the land and the leasing of the land. And I would say the kind of third point, it's important to recognize why China, you can't characterize China as being capitalist, is that do capitalists dictate politics? And to this, it's a simple no. Very much capital is submitted to politics. That's what we're seeing. Why the West is freaking out about, oh my God, they're cracking down on capitalists, because they're not in power. There's this interesting. He's a venture capitalist, but named Eric Lee, and he gave an actually interesting TED talk about understanding the system of governance here. I would recommend that too. But he once had an interview with RT, and he said, in China we have capitalists, but not capitalism. I'm a capitalist, but I have no power. I mean, it sounds a bit simplistic, but I mean, we're seeing this, the way that, big tech, private industry, private tutoring, fintech, all these areas are being controlled, is actually saying the government and the CPC has power over of capital and how it's developed. And ultimately, capital is submitted to politics.